Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor. A task team set up by the Minister of Basic Education has proposed sweeping changes to the way metrics are taught and tested. One of the task team's recommendations is that mathematics become a compulsory subject. Another is for the introduction of tougher university entrance requirements. But will this help save our education system? Dr. Graham Block and Professor Roxana Osman of Wits University will be in the studio later to discuss the state of our education system. But first, President Jacob Zuma has joined 50 African leaders and US President Barack Obama in Washington, D.C. to discuss trade, investment, and diplomacy. But is this just another talk shop, or can some meaningful business be done? My guests to discuss this are Business Day editor Songezo Zibi and former US diplomat Spector. Guys, welcome to the show. Brooks, let me ask you, is this just, clogging up the Washington, D.C. traffic, doing some shopping and going home, or will some business really be done?
Well, it's definitely former. There will be a lot of traffic, and there probably will be some shopping, and there'll be a White House dinner and all the rest. But there are two big things that are on the agenda that matter for now. And the first of these, of course, is AGOA. Now, people start to their eyes glaze over the moment you talk about things like AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Yeah. But it really does matter because it allows something over 3,000 or so different product lines to be imported into the United States duty-free. And South Africa has done very well by that. The numbers I see say something like $2.3 billion worth of automobiles and auto parts are exported to the U.S. duty-free. The problem is it's not a treaty. It's U.S. law that was passed by Congress 15 years ago, and it's up for renewal or not passage depending on how Congress disposes of it. This is a good opportunity for lots of African leaders to explain this isn't a gift. This helps us grow our economies so we can buy more of your products, to convince Congress to pass a new version of this bill that includes South Africa in it. And the second, of course, is there'll be a lot of trade, deals in export, import, trade, investment that will be signed. Maybe not as big as what would happen with China, but real. Can
I just interrupt you? Songezo Zibi, let me bring you in. I mean, your Barack Obama, you're sitting there with your very lean cabinet of 17 people while we have a cabinet of 35. And you're sitting there, you've got upwards of 40, nearly 50 African leaders. Surely it's a kind of one-size-fits-all for Africa. Will it work? Can you strike deals with individuals? Can you strike deals with the whole continent?
I think there are two reasons for this format. The first is that it's, US presidents in their second term usually travel a lot. There are just too many countries to try and get around. And this is a peculiar second term for President Obama because I think he wants to push some of his milestone policies. And therefore, this is the easiest format. The second thing, though, is that it follows a trend in a way because Japan has done the same thing and China has done the same thing. And getting around the continent to try and get the ascendancy on one or other of the superpowers is going to be incredibly difficult. I'm not sure all of them will be able to get the kind of deals that they want done, but in terms of making a statement and start opening doors for further AGOA opportunities, I think it's good. Here's the thing, about 77% of the trade between Africa and the US in terms of AGOA has been oil and other similar type of products. What we need is to manufacture consumer products which can go into the larger US consumer market. And in that respect, we failed because the rest of it is the automobiles that Brooks is talking about, which are partly German.
Let me ask you about the elephant in the room, China. Everyone says, oh, the Americans are only waking up now because China is ubiquitous all over the continent. Is this a factor in the relationship? I was looking at some of the trade figures between us and the Chinese, between the continent and the Chinese. It's upwards of $170 billion as reported in your paper. With the US, it's only $60 billion US.
Well, I mean, first of all, most of that trade for China is raw materials, imports. And those commodity booms, they go in cycles, they go up, they also go down. There isn't a whole lot of Chinese investment in productive capability on the continent, even if there is a lot of spending on infrastructure construction. The key for this group, this meeting, is to begin to push harder with US businesses to consider those that haven't already, and there are about 600 in this country and more at the rest of the continent, consider investing in productive capabilities on the continent to do exactly what Songezo was talking about.
Do you think China is a factor in this, that it pushed the US to call this meeting, to ask for it?
China is a factor, but the biggest challenge that the US government has got is messaging and trying to establish a different basis for its relationship. The Chinese have a particular way of operating on the continent, which they've done in the case of South Africa as well. So Transnet got a loan from the Chinese. 80% of it goes to a Chinese company because they go on to procure stuff from China anyway. So we'll give you the money to buy stuff from us, and that's not real investing in my view. And this is the difficulty of the United States, because the Chinese throw a lot of money around. What they have not been able to demonstrate is that the kind of trade that they're trying to establish with the African continent is more substantive, it's got greater benefit for African economies, and the money stays within African economies. That is the task of the US government, and AGOA is a good place to start.
You spoke about AGOA. Let's talk about that. There's AGOA and there's South Africa and AGOA. Is South Africa really, should it be benefiting from this, or should it be excluded?
Well, the South African government answer, of course, is absolutely it should be. And you remember Rob Davies, before he left, said, AGOA, you should pass another bill that makes it effective for 15 years. Yeah. U.S. Congress doesn't operate that way, and there are two issues that South Africans especially have to be able to confront and explain and deal with. The first is whether or not, just as you say, South Africa has graduated out of the other countries' categories. Its economy is too advanced, too big, too rich, etc. South Africans argue that that's not right, because so much of our economy is tied into the rest of at least the southern half of the continent. But the second part of it is there are issues that divide the United States and South Africa on some fairly niggling but troublesome trade issues. The importation from the U.S. into South Africa of things like chicken and chicken parts. It's not a huge market, but remember, this is a bill that gets passed by Congress, and individual congressmen have constituencies. And if constituencies in some place say, wait a minute, it's not fair, we're losing our jobs because of this, AGOA has problems. May not, but that has to be addressed. That's a messaging that African countries have to take to the U.S.
Now, Songezo, there's a lot of talk about Barack Obama. A lot of people say, oh, he's out to lunch, he's giving speeches, he's playing golf, he's not traveling, you know, he's done, he's finished his work here. Is he taking this seriously? Is this part of his legacy program, you think?
I think he's taking it very seriously, because apart from the trade issues, by the way, there are other issues relating to security matters with for instance, with the African continent, as well as cooperation in other multilateral institutions, because over the last 3 to 5 years, I think there's been a growing schism between the developing world and Africa is seeing itself as part of that, and the US and other major powers, and maybe this is an opportunity to try and bring them closer again.
Yeah. Is he doing a Clinton with this?
Well, let's put it this way. The Clinton administration, their Africa legacy project was AGOA. Yeah. The Bush legacy, say what you will about him in lots of other different ways, the big legacy of George W. Bush for Africa was PEPFAR, the special program on HIV and AIDS. For Obama, their administration is definitely trying to build on the former, that is the trade issue, but the nature of this conference, the nature of this summit is building for the future, the next generation, and they've launched this program to bring hundreds of younger African professionals and young leaders, so that he can argue that the change in the relationship, Africa and the US, is being built on the backs of a new generation of young leaders for the future.
Spector, Songezo Zibi, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still to come, we ask whether new proposals to change the way Matric pupils are taught can save South African education.
News that moves. ENCA.com.